All right, let's get right into it. Well, we got a lot to talk about today. I watched a really good video on YouTube, and it really just talked about, see, another, let's call it a canon event, right? Of self improvement is your circle has to get smaller. Now, the reason your circle has to get smaller is because you have to go from viewing people and believing that they'll do the things they say versus you view things as they are. You view them for their actions. And this is why I realized, with my friends, because it doesn't matter what you want from them. Ultimately, the issue lies in when you have higher standards for them than they do have for themselves, or there's a disconnect because then you come off as you're trying to force your views on them. And that's the thing, too. And there's a crazy part. You have to recognize that even if they say they want to work out or do the things that you want to do, which is why you thought, oh, yeah, like they're like me, if their actions don't show that, then they're not like you innately. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you might have to lose some people to really like understand what that means. Because for me, it's a little weird because it makes you more cynical, but it also makes you more optimistic, right? Because if you recognize that person is going to need a lot more time, but you also recognize yourself that okay, you're going to need a lot more time because you really only started to just take the self improvement stuff really seriously, and you've been doing it for a long time. They haven't been doing it for a couple of months or whatever period of time, but you've likely been doing it longer. So your standards innately are going to be higher. So even if they say they want to meet you at your standards, if their actions don't reflect it, then they just don't want it, and that's okay. But that disconnect, ultimately, I'm seeing now is what kind of causes your circle to get smaller and smaller because ultimately once you recognize that and you really start taking stuff seriously, you have to think, damn, there's really it's some anime shit. There's no going back. That part of you died. They're dead and it can't come back. But you start to recognize, oh, okay, so I'm this new version of me, or I keep going through all these versions of myself. Because that's the thing. This is where you have to be objective too. Like, take yourself. If you're listening to this, you're likely the most locked in person you know. And take your ego out. Because if you think that's egotistical to say, you just you don't self improve. You don't know. But if you really take the self improvement stuff seriously and you're trying to be the best version of yourself, when you're objective of your reality, you're probably the most locked in person you know. You might have other people saying, oh, they're locked in or they want to do these things, but ultimately their actions, they're not going to reflect it. And you also recognize even parts of yourself. Yeah, like my actions didn't reflect it either, too. But you have to, and this is why another thing too of SR, probably me on 180 days because that was my original like goal. But now it's an identity, so I just do it. But it took like 150 days basically of SR to kind of start seeing that a bunch of other things too. Because what you guys don't understand is the diet, the weightlifting sessions, and SR. All these things go hand in hand. They amplify each other. Honestly, nutrition amplifies the gym, and our SR amplifies. Wait, no, nutrition amplifies the gym, and SR honestly amplifies diet, and it really amplifies everything. But they all help and mold each other and make each unique area individually stronger. But you need that identity shift to stay consistent long enough to get those results because, and they're just going to happen too is, and this is, it's probably all the anime I watch, but it feels like a curse sometimes to, I guess, be nice, which I guess when you start to get on this path, you just innately become more of an asshole. That's how the ego describes it. It's not that you're an asshole. It's just you're aligned with yourself and you know what it takes. So when other people aren't doing those things, it's not that you attack them, but you know they don't align with what you want. So you naturally distance yourself. But for me, one of my favorite animes, right, My Hero and Naruto. Naruto is like, I'm gonna save Sasuke. I'm gonna save Sasuke. That's really good in anime, but in reality, you can't say anyone that doesn't want to be saved. You know, and the problem is you're gonna care more. This is the thing too, because the person that I watched the video, they were talking about they were a trainer and they cared more about the client's health than the client did. but that's what leads to the disappointment. That's why you feel upset. But it seems really simple too. Yeah, just don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. But it's something you just have to go through. That's what I'm like, it's a canon event because if you don't go through this, you're not gonna understand the importance of it. Because remember, there's another thing too. When you really start to get on the journey, you're gonna realize not many people are like people. Everyone LARP self improvement. This is another thing. Everyone LARP self improvement, hitting the gym. Women do this especially too. Like, they're gonna LARP working out. They don't work out. They might meal prep once a week. They don't do it. You're just gonna start to recognize all these things. If someone says they're sorry and their actions don't reflect it, then they're not sorry. What the words don't mean anything. These are just all things you start to pick up on when you get aligned. That's the thing too. The gym, SR, nutrition, innately all these things amplify your vibration. And I always view vibration. It's like a video game. It's like Sage Mode. It's like chakra. All these things. So the higher it gets, the more superpowers or new abilities that you gain access to. Now the consequence of that is, remember, you're not stagnant anymore. You're only going forward. But everyone around you is objectively just staying in the same spot, which is okay if that's what they want. But now the thing is, in your case, if you're gonna get to that other side of self improvement, you have to keep going through these changes, and you get to a point where there's no going back. It's some Attack on Titan shit, you know. You know what's gonna occur because other people have already told you, like, if you keep doing this, this is what's gonna happen. But a part of the journey is also is recognizing you have to, like, how bad do you want it? Because you're going to be tested. Do you really want to be lean? Do you really want to have that physique that mogs everyone? Do you want to be so self-disciplined, like that? Everyone thinks you're crazy. You're gonna really like, you're gonna learn and start to see, like, yeah, like you're tested every day. But then you're gonna also come to terms of, you know what? It is what it is. I made my choices. I have to live with the consequences of going on this path. It is what it is. Because I know on the other side of all this, it'll be worth it. But when you're going through it, because man, like, I can't even lie at this point because it just, you're like, damn, it's like, you're like, damn, it's this. But that's the thing too. Now, I fortunately have like an online community of other people like me. And so it's okay. But more so like, the actual people, like your actual friends. And you realize you're not really like them. But that's okay. That's another thing too. There's two sides to it. Because for me, it'd be cool to like have someone like I could drive to, and that's as locked in as me. But that's kind of the whole thing with the self improvement. You actually become a main character because if you take your whole environment, you probably you are the most locked in person. It's not even you don't have to doubt it. And that's another thing too. Like no one's gonna. That's the thing too. That's another thing I had to realize is you can't try to put your friends on because only when they do will they understand. But many people, they never get to the point where they do long enough to get these benefits. They'll start and then stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. They don't ever get like really deep into the journey, or not to the end, but like very, very deep into the journey. But when you recognize it takes so long, it really makes you patient because you realize. And here's another thing too. Like if you're a tall dude, tall Nick, whatever, weightlifting for you takes even longer. But the good side of that is, someone that's really tall and also muscular, they're gonna mog everyone. It doesn't matter if you're short and got a frame, you're gonna mog by the 6'2", 6'3" dude. It is what it is. But because of that, it takes a lot longer if you're taller for your physique to really fill out, So you really got to give it, I don't know how much time, but I'd say at least 5 years, 5, 10. But really, you should measure progress in decades. Have I been consistent for a decade? And that doesn't even sound crazy because there are some people out there like that. They've had the same meals, done all these things for such long periods of time. You think they're crazy. It's not that they're crazy. Your standards are just too low. And that's ultimately what you start to realize too. Many people, they just have low standards. And that's not an attack. It's just they have low standards. But what I recognize now is, ultimately, as long as you're aligned with yourself, you'll be okay. But what the curse comes from, my friends, if I'm really objective about it, they only want to have fun. Every time I hung out with them, it's just to smoke or do those things. And there's nothing wrong with those activities, but when you get on this path, you recognize you can't do those things. So you have to ask yourself, like, were they really friends or just people, that I did that activity with? And that's the sad part too. Because remember, if you stay constant and don't self improve, you'll never grow separate from them because you'll always be around them innately. But when you get on that self improvement journey, now you're the X factor. You're the one constantly changing or constantly or going up, and everyone else is either going backward or staying at the level they are. Because and this it hurts too if you're someone that cares. I guess I've always kind of been told like, oh, you're nice, but that's what makes it hurt so much because they say they want something, they don't do it. Other people tell them they have to do it, they don't do it, and you just get so disappointed. And innately, they can sense that because you get more authentic. It's the people that make these videos. You can't cap because you either going through it, or you've done it for so long. It's so you can't even cap. But I'll say, think of it like this. Everyone say Attack on Titan, slight spoilers, but if you haven't watched Attack on Titan, the hell are you doing? Lock in and watch it. But the rumbling, when you honestly, the first thing you step to the gym, you have basically started the rumbling, literally, because whatever your friend group is, it's probably going to get cut by 80%. And that sounds crazy. You're like, that's impossible. These are my day ones. I love these people. They're family. I didn't even. That's what hurts too. I thought they were family. No, they were family. One lives with me. Funny enough, maybe I'll make a video about that someday. But things just happen that even people that were literally family. Because with me, I don't like the term friend because me, I've always been very selective because you recognize you got to protect your energy, you got to protect your frequency. So you have to be very selective. So it takes me a while to, well, not takes a while, it's just you want to vet properly. But as you develop this awareness, you realize, damn, maybe I didn't vet well enough because you have to vet based off what the person is currently doing, not their potential. That's the trap. As a dude, you can't, the person has to be locked in. And that's the scary part too, because it's like you want to get as much people on the path as possible, but you're really probably going to only interact with people that are walking the path, are deeper in the path than you. Because to drag someone to this level and this awareness, you recognize it's going to take so long. By the time they get to the point you're at, you're going to be leagues ahead of that point. And that's where it becomes, you're going to go through so much growth. Your mind, and this is where the mental and the spiritual get separate because it's like your mind has to catch up to like, wow, you've gone through so much changes where you thought that you were the same as them. But your mind one day clicks like, wait, no, damn, like you're actually like years ahead of them. And not from ego, but more so just you being objective. You're like, you've been doing it longer. So you've gone through more breakthroughs, more changes. You're also older, so you've likely been through more stuff. And that helps develop you spiritually, of course, but it makes you just wiser, and all these other things. That's why self improvement. I'm always going to recommend everyone to do it. Because as a man, you have to do it because how you find your purpose is going to be through the suffering, the discomfort. See, for me, I'm like, damn, you can't even. You have no one to blame but yourself because at the end of the day, you walk the path daily. No one forcing me to wake up. No one forced me to eat these meals. I just do it because I know it aligns with my future self and the point I want to get to. So there's that part of self improvement too, where you recognize like, damn, you're gonna be a lonely ass motherfucker for a good while, especially when you recognize, yeah, you have to really learn yourself. You have to be like 1,000% okay alone. And I thought I was, but there's still parts that, yeah, like it'd be, those parts you have to kill is a little harsh, but not let control you or consume you. That's why I highly recommend, like, definitely journal. As I've gone through this latest change, journaling has helped a lot too because, and I was also blessed by the YouTube algorithm. But I thought, like, damn, how did I get to this point? And I think back, it was I think it's been 2 months now where I decide, okay, we're gonna get lean. Yeah, it's almost been 2 months. But when the gear switches, like, okay, we're gonna get lean, whatever it takes. I'm not gonna stop. That's when I think I started drifting apart from other people, and it's you actually get so locked in you don't even recognize it. It's like your standards are gonna get higher, but you assumed that their standards were the same as yours, so you're telling them like, "Oh, we have to be locked in. We have to do these things," but then you're doing all these things, but you're so locked in on you. You didn't even realize that they weren't doing the things, so they actually didn't want it, and that's okay because ultimately they probably still do want it, but their standards, that's where the disconnect is because, but that's what also hurts too because the person has to go through it to understand, but then you think, damn, I wasted so much time. If I was just consistent from day one, who knows where I'd be? But that's part of the journey too. You have to really recognize how important time is, but you have to waste some time or go backward a little bit, go forward, backward, forward for that to finally click. That's why I'm like, now, yeah, maybe losing some people, that's the cost. But it's something you have to go through because you have to, in order to know what your standards are, you have to, things have to change in your external to reflect your new standards. And it's all spiritual at the end of the day, remember. But if your standards keep raising, your environment around you can't stay the same because that would mean that your standards haven't changed, but they have. So that has to reflect in the external reality. That's why people, things start to shift. But it makes sense. Like, yeah, that's why everyone's like, oh yeah, you get more alone. It's not you get more alone. You just it's almost like you're manifesting it because innately you're saying, whatever it takes, that's going to be a test. But then the people around you, they're not going to align with you anymore. That's what I'm always saying. If you guys have someone that's really on the path, and you'll know because they're either, because remember, it's one of two things. But if you're watching this, you've probably always been the person, and this is a big problem I had. You're trying to always do this with everyone. You're trying to get them to be healthy and do all these things. Now, but I feel like for me, and that's something I have to drill out more. It's okay. Maybe you've always just wanted someone to push you like that, but you never had that. So you wanted to be that for other people, but other people, they don't want that, and that's something you want. But it reflects in you trying to help people because no one ever really told you to lock in. You just kind of, maybe you found a video on YouTube and you decided to take it seriously, but you kind of always wanted someone else that was like you. That's why people that you thought were locked in, but they aren't, that's why it hurts so much because you thought they were the same. But then your expectations of them are higher than the standards and the they have for themselves. That's what leads to disconnect. That's why you'll come off as an asshole. And that's the sad part too, because the goal is you genuinely help them. You care more about them than they do themselves. That's why it hurts ultimately, because you care more about them than they do themselves. That's why it hurts. But you can't do that ultimately, and it's not even selfish. You have to just prioritize yourself ultimately first, and you have to just, because to me, I'm like, you know what, we just got to go through this. We have to get through the spiritual, let's call them spiritual pains, where you're like, damn, like you fucked up because innately it is your fault, but you have to live with the outcome. And you're like, damn, you did innately sign up for it though. That's why you can't, and that's the thing, as you do this more and more, you stop playing the victim card, especially when, you know, it's so easy to make excuses, but ultimately it's something you also manifest too, when you start to learn about the manifestation and that stuff, because they were good people, I've known them for a while. I really lived with one of them for a good period of time, but innately, ultimately, I pushed them away, even though I thought we were getting closer. But you kind of just you start pushing them away because you're going through changes like fast, like because self improvement. It's constant improvement. Your mind is gonna keep. Think of it as let me think. It's almost like soul leveling. You're gonna like every couple of weeks you're gonna have like a level up. Okay, new perspective. Boom, this or that. Standards are gonna go up. And you get to a point where you become aware of that. Okay, this is the base. Now, how do we improve this more and more and more? And doing that more and more and more is just having more identity shifts, because those identity shifts are going to lead to more good habits. And just stacking a bunch of good habits upon good habits upon good habits is going to make you vibrate even higher. But the consequences of that, you won't know until you're at that point. That's why it's important, you know. Remember, all these things I already know it's innately going to happen to me because you're walking the path. The body game stories, they're starting to happen already. Coworkers at work, and I'm just like, I don't understand, but no, I do understand because I can't be surprised. Remember, it's the rumbling. You were told it would happen. You've seen it happen, and everyone mentions it, right? If you want extraordinary results, you have to do extraordinary things. You have to do things that people aren't willing to do. Most men, they're not willing to be alone because it's hard. Like guys, like sometimes this shit, you're like, damn, what did I sign up for? And that's okay. You can have those thoughts, but just still show up. You're like, damn, like you really gonna wake up at 4:40 or whatever time to work out all the time? And I know I'm crazy when I tell my coworkers I do it, and you're like, damn, I could never. I'm like, that's the normal reaction. It's not that you're better. It's just remember, objectively, you're the crazy one. You have to recognize that you're the crazy one, and that's okay. But everyone else is normal. You're the weird one. You're the outlier. You eating while hitting your protein goal, you're the fucking weirdo. And that's not an attack, but it's just you have to be objective. You're the weird one ultimately. You're not gooning all the time. You're on SR. You're a fucking weirdo, and you have to sit with that and be okay with that. Sometimes you'll go through periods where you're like, damn, what did I sign up for? But you also recognize like you can't go back, you know, because once you have the knowledge and the awareness, you actually cannot go backward. You can't. Like once you get deep in the journey, you can't go back. That's why it hurts because you know, damn, like maybe there is a way to repair the friendship, but you also think, is it even worth it? Because I'm at this point now. Like imagine it's 6 months when we're like less than 12%. How my standards going to be then? They're going to be even higher than now, and this is already a consequence of my current standards. So you're like, damn, like, is it even worth it? Do I even do it? You don't know, but I guess you do want to be present, but you also have to think, you know, you're going to go through a lot of changes. This is why I would say it's dangerous. It's probably dangerous, and I can attest to that too, because I was in a relationship, but you outgrow that person too. So it's dangerous to date when you're on a self-improvement journey. But the thing is, it's a lifelong journey. That's the hard part because the people that are telling you balance, I'm not at that point yet, but I'm not sure what balance is on this self-improvement journey. But maybe that's like years down the line where you have everything in order and you can like choose if you want to eat the crumble cookie and know it won't destroy you. Or you can hang out with a chick and it's not going to be the end of your soul. But that's the thing, you have to be out of balance, I'm recognized now, for so long before you gain the ability to have balance. Because when regular people tell you balance, they're not in balance. Everyone telling you that you're fat, cooked, gooner. It is what, or they don't do self-improvement. You have people that are like kids telling you about balance. Like guys aren't even fucking 20. Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, you don't know. Like you don't know. Even myself, it's like I'm older, but shit, I'm still basically a beginner in my lifting journey. And even with the diet too, I've only been eating this way for maybe a year, you know? So that's where the good thing comes from. You can extend grace to people because yeah, like you're also a beginner. Even though you've been doing it for a couple of years, you're still a beginner in the grand scheme of things. But you also think, damn, I wish I really recognized that while I was still friends with them because maybe you could have saved it. But you don't develop this awareness unless you kind of go through the breakup of the friendship or whatever. So you're like, you know, it's the rumbling. Like you're trying to stop it. You want it, but you can't. You can't because, and here's the thing too. When you picked up that dumbbell for the first time or told yourself, I'm going to be healthy, you put the rumbling in place. You cannot stop it. It's going to happen. But part of the journey is recognizing, yeah, like you'll be okay when that, you know, you get to that point. Because these are all things that are gonna happen. But that's a good thing. At least, you know, you have the reason I make these videos. It's really, you know, to just share my experience perspective, but it's to prepare you guys that have just started. The day you decide to go into the gym or move that first dumbbell. The reason I make these videos now is because I'll never forget. I picked up that 10-pound dumbbell and did I think that's why innately the dumbbell shoulder press is my favorite movement because that was the first exercise I did. And it wasn't even in the gym. I had my mom record me, and it had really shitty form, but that was the first exercise I did. That was quite literally me opening the spiritual door. So now that I'm here, innately, it's a consequence of opening that door, of picking up those dumbbells. But when you first start lifting, you don't think you're gonna lose like really good friends. You don't think your standards are gonna get so high where you'll probably never eat Oreos again. You don't expect all that, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Even more so if you're blessed enough to be around, like if you got an older brother and he's on this path, whether you like it or not, unless you move out, you're probably going to be joining him. But ultimately, it's going to be a good thing because he's telling you for a reason, and you have to recognize that too. But this is why it's important. You get different perspectives, but you want to be around other locked in people too because they're going to tell you all these same things. And it's hard. Like, guys, don't get me wrong. Like, it's fucking difficult because you're like, damn, like, I should have seen the signs, or you could have been nicer. But ultimately, you don't want to settle or be with people that don't innately align with you, or maybe they did align with you. Maybe they just needed more time. Like, it's a lot of what ifs. Maybe I could have done this differently. Maybe I could have said that differently. You can apologize, but the damage is innately done. But and you have to accept that. It's like and another thing too. The breakup. Or if you get cheated on, those are just can events. You have to go through something like that, and it hurts. But that's why you can't go back to that person because you're going back to older version of yourself. But you have these goals and visions that you have to vibrate higher. You can't vibrate higher by going back to people that you used to be with, or maybe you can. Maybe they rise with you or help you rise to but maybe that could be cope. Ultimately that could be cope on my part. But as you do this more and more, you just you get okay with it. If you're married, maybe if your partner, you didn't make the best choice of partner, but you ultimately have to live with that choice and make the best of it. That's another thing too, man. Oh man, I just can't imagine getting married, man. Anyone who works in sales, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't have to even tell you more. You already know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I would say just when you're on the self improvement journey, just you have to be very objective of your reality. If you tell someone, if someone says they want $1 million, they're gonna lock in, and their actions don't reflect it, then it's innately they don't want it, and that's okay. But they have to that awareness eventually they'll develop because you have to because you're gonna be. I keep saying I want these things. I said I want to do this again, and I started doing it again. That's why once you decide I'm not gonna go anymore, you have to fight for that identity like it's fucking life or death. Literally, like your SR streak is so much more important than you niggas understand. I'm telling you, it's so much more important than niggas understand because you're building this new identity. You have to give it so much time because everyone thinks SR is like it's for people. Oh, it's only if you have a porn problem. No, it's lust is innately something you're gonna deal with essentially every day. That's why those that master it, you're gonna start. I'm telling you guys, you're gonna start doing shit that just it doesn't make sense. I'm also at this point too because of SR. Because remember, SR it's an amplifier. You have to SR amplifies everything. But the gym is how you really increase your vibration in your diet. SR will amplify that. That's why they all go hand in hand because they all innately help each other. You take the gym seriously. Eventually, you can start taking diet seriously. When you take your diet seriously, now you're gonna start getting spiritual. You're gonna start doing SR. You're gonna start meditating. You're gonna start journaling. You're gonna start reading. You start doing all these things because you decided really to start working out. That's why you have to work out. Fuck all the physical reasons. It's not about getting stronger. It's not about any of that stuff. It's that spiritual journey that you have to go through as a dude. Because it's going to prepare you. Because shit's going to be difficult, man. Like, I've been through some shit, guys. Man, I'm telling you. You're just like, damn. But you get through one difficult thing. When something difficult happens again, you know you're going to be good. Because, especially, if you lose someone, a death or whatever, or get a really shitty breakup. You've been through that once. You can get through a lot of other things. You could quite literally get through anything else. That's another thing, too. This is why SR streaks, high streaks are important because if you can go 120 days, what the fuck can't you do? Because ultimately, less than 0.5% of the population can do that. And you have to, that's another thing too. With self improvement, you have to, I know it's hard, but you got to give yourself a pat on the back because objectively, you're a cold ass motherfucker because you're doing things that other niggas just, they won't even attempt. They can't go a day without gooning. You've gone months. What the, are you crazy? Like, good shit, but you're fucking insane. You just have to recognize that you are actually fucking insane. But that's okay. That's the thing though. It's okay to be like this. Just, I'll leave you guys with, make sure it's just hold yourself to those standards. Don't hold other people to those standards. Don't make that mistake that I did. Just hold yourself to those standards and view people not for what they say, but for what they do. Because when you get to that point, now you're not going to push as much. You're going to pull back, because ultimately, and this is another thing too. You don't have to tell them, just show them. That's another thing too. I was like, I'm going to stop talking. Let me just, well, I'm not going to stop talking because I have to make these videos, but, well, no, I get to, excuse me. But ultimately, and I've noticed it too with my family. Like, as I take this more and more serious, I've noticed my mom and sister have begun to be a little more receptive because that's how it is. But I'm like, that's how I'll do it going forward. I'm gonna get lean and shred as shit. Maybe that's how I can salvage my friend. Maybe we'll see. But if not, at least I'm lean, right? But at what cost? But I guess that's the thing. You have to. My thing is like, okay, I got to get to the other side of this body game shit, the lean is lost shit, and then I'll tell you if it's worth it or not. Because right now we're documenting going through it. But at the end, or not the end, because there's no end, but on the other side, we will see if it was worth it. Ultimately. But yeah, guys, stay locked in. Hold yourself accountable first. Raise your standards. And just ultimately trust the process. But yeah, stay locked. Let's get it.